Okay, this is the question on page 395, question 5, just part C and part D. So these two parts were particularly tricky and they didn't have an awful lot to do with, they didn't actually have anything to do with using the graph that you had have created for the first parts A and B. For this one here, let's take a read of it and then what we're going to do is go through how to go about finding this. So it says, if the exact equation for the height is given with this, calculate the maximum height exactly. So the only way that we know how to do this, there is another way that is slightly easier, but we haven't done it yet. The only way to find the maximum height is to do what's called completing the square. So we would have looked at this a couple of weeks ago. So when we complete the square, we are able to find the maximum value. What happens when we complete the square? If I just go down here for a second, I'll end up with something in the form of a x minus b to be squared plus c, where b, c is the maximum point. Now because this is the x value and this is the y value, if we're looking for how high it is, that's talking about the y value. So this c value here, that is going to tell us the maximum height. So if that value here was a 10, then we know the maximum height was going to be 10. If it was a minus 11, then it would be a maximum height of minus 11. So let's go for a second over to take a look at two examples of completing the square. Just the very, very basics. The one that was in this question was much tougher, but let's just go through this just to make sure that we fully understand completing the square. So to complete the square, what you do is you make sure there's nothing at the front of the x squared. And then what you do is you take your x and you divide this by 2, minus 4. And you put it in a bracket squared. Okay, and that's the basics of it. So what you do then out the side, just for workings, you square that out and you see how far we are away from having this plus 10. And what we'll see is that when we square this out, we will have these first two parts, and then we just need to add a number on here, that's going to be our c value, to get us back to that plus 10. So we're not changing the sum, we're changing the way the sum is written. So when I multiply this out, whatever way you multiply out your brackets, I'm going to end up with x squared minus 4x plus 16. So that is x squared minus 8x plus 16. So I'm at plus 16, but I want to be at 10. So what I have to do to make this become this, I have to subtract 6. So I know that I need to say, I need a minus a 6 here. So I need to do the exact same thing over here. I need a minus a 6, because now I'm back to this sum here. So I know that my maximum value, all I've changed is I just changed what way that's written. They're the same value, they just are written in a different way. So I know that my maximum point, you change the sign on this one, it's 4. You keep the sign of the other one, minus 6. So the maximum height there is 4 minus 6. That's the maximum point. The actual height is the y value, because we know what the x and the y-axis is the height one. We know that our height is going to equal -6. That's the highest value it's going to reach. Let's take a look and we'll do the second one again. This one's slightly different because you have a number in front of the x. So what you have to do here, you have to take that out as common. Now we're going to ignore this little number 4 at the end. It's just these two here that we put into the square. So I'm going to take out 2 as common, and I'm left with x squared minus 6x. And then the minus 4 just stays out there. We don't worry about it. So again, completing the square, now this is like this. I can complete the square by just keeping the 2 there. Don't worry about the 2. X, and I divide this by 2. Okay? Now I'm going to check what this is and what I'll need to do to get back to this point. So I'm going to take that over here and I'm going to do my working. So I'm going to keep the 2 for a second. I'm going to multiply the inside. So that's going to give me an x squared minus 3x and a plus 9. I'll multiply it all by 2 in a second. I want to just add anything I can in here. That's going to be minus 6x plus 9. That's 2x squared minus 12x plus 18. So as we can see, I have these first two bits here and here. All I need to do now is I need to get to this number, this minus 4. So how do I make 18 become minus 4? Well, I subtract 18 to get to 0, and then I need to go down another 4. So really, I need to subtract 22. So that is where I'm getting the minus 22 from here. And again, my maximum point is going to be change the sign on this and keep this one. So it's 3 and minus 22. That is my maximum point. minus 22 is my maximum height. So we're going to apply those rules now to what we were looking at in the previous question. So this is the question and the solution. I'm starting with it over on this side over here. So for this one here, I wrote that you need to find the maximum. To find the maximum, you need to complete the square. Now this one here is particularly tricky with completing the square because you're going to end up with decimals, but that's okay. So I'm going to just do the answer out here at the bottom as well, just so we can kind of go through how it's done. T squared plus 24t and plus 1. So what you're doing is I need to get rid of this. I need to take out minus 4.9 because I wanted to just start with t. So I have t squared, makes it easier that it's positive as well. But what I need to do is I need to take out 4.9 from that. So I need to divide that by 4.9. And that is where we're getting this kind of number here, this fraction. And I'm just keeping it as a fraction because I'd rather a fraction than a decimal. And then the plus 1 is just stuck at the side. So if we look at where we're at this stage, I'm at the same stage as this here. I've just done that. I've taken out that 2 as common. I've just happened to have a worse number here, and it's 4.9. So next stage, to go from here to here, I know all I have to do is divide this by 2, same as I divided this by 2. So I have my minus 4.9. I have t minus this divided by 2. That's where I'm getting that number up there, the 120 over 49. And that's squared. Now I don't need the plus 1 here because I know something else has to go in here. Just move that out of the way, so a bit more space. I now know I need to go find this value here. How did I do that before? I did my workings out at the side, and if you check and see, that's where these workings are coming from here. So all I've done here is I've actually taken this bit here, and I've multiplied it out to see where I am and how I can get back to this original. So when I multiply this out, if I do it over at the side, I'm going to just go through the one at the top. When I multiply that out, I will have this here. Okay, how do I make this into this? Well, if I add one of those, I get back to 0, and then I'm going to add another 1. So that's where I'm getting this little box bit here. So if I add those two together, this is what I need to stick on the end here so that I haven't changed from this sum, I've just changed what it looks like. So at the end of this, I'm going to say plus 1489 over 49. Okay? So what I'll do at the very end of this video, I'll go through that slower again. Just what I'll do is I'll show you how to do that last bit so that if you understand what I've just done, you don't need to pay attention to the last bit, and you can just you can leave the video at that. Whereas I'll go a bit slower through that at the very end of the video if you want. So this part here, then part D. Part D said find the percentage error in the maximum height read off the graph as a percentage of the exact value. So what you need to do there is the value that we read off the graph was in part B, and it was the number 31. So it was a value of 31. You're then going to subtract, because we know that our height in this case, sorry, I forgot to finish that off. There's our maximum point, change the sign on this and then keep the sign on that. So that means my maximum height is going to be this value here. And then I'm going to write h equals 1489 over 49. Then I need to find what the difference is between what I originally found. That was my part B. So it's 31. Take away this value here to find what my error was from my picking it off the graph. That's where this bit comes from here. And I divide it by the correct answer, which is this one. And I just get a percentage of that. And that's where all of those values are coming from.